All right, guys, so the question is, do I want a all-terrain tire or a beefy mud terrain tire for my Subaru, in particular Subaru Crosstrek, or really any SUV, CUV that you're wanting to off-road? What is the tire for you? And to be honest, that is a tricky question to answer, because it really comes down to what are you doing with your car? What car do you have? What engine do you have? Transmission, etc. It really is case specific. So I'm going to try and cover the ins and outs as best I can. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about all-terrains. In particular, we're going to be talking about this Toyo Open Country AT3. Now, the really cool thing about these tires is that they come in a pretty special size, in particular for crosstreks. They come in a 225, right down here it says 225, 75, 15. Now, there's lots of videos on the internet talking about what those numbers mean, but when it comes down to it, it basically means it is a medium large size tire for a Subaru Crosstrek, and it's honestly kind of the perfect size tire for second gen Crosstreks. It's just barely taller than a stock tire. So for those of you who maybe don't have a lift or aren't wanting to trim and cut a bunch, or are really looking for a lighter weight tire, this is going to be as close as you can really get to stock, and still downsizing to a smaller, more capable 15-inch wheel. So for anybody who's really trying to be self-conscious about that weight, this is definitely a good tire to look at. If we come over here and look at these Yokohamas, you can see that is the only number that has changed. It's 235 instead of 225. And the basics of this is that's the width of your tire. So that's 235 millimeters wide versus 225 millimeters wide. So you're only talking a centimeter, which really in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big number difference. But that second number is where we're really gonna come into play. The 75 is actually a percentage of that first number. So we're talking 75% of 235 is gonna be the sidewall height. And so when you increase that initial number, you're actually gonna be increasing the overall diameter of your tire as well. So this guy works out to be, I wanna say it's about almost an inch, or like 0.8 inches taller than the 225 Toyo. And also, by being a mud terrain, translates to an additional 10 pounds of tire, of rubber that you're trying to rotate each time. All right, so we're talking about a smaller and lighter tire versus a larger, more aggressive and heavier tire. So the problem with this, when you're talking about a Crosstrek or just a Subaru in general, is power, or the lack thereof usually. And so for most people, a lighter and even a little bit smaller tire is usually going to be the better option, because you're going to have more power to weight ratio. You're going to be able to put more power down as there's less weight that you're trying to move, because obviously it's the weight of your vehicle, but then each time your axle's trying to move, it's trying to move this weight as well. And so if you have say 5-pound weights on your shoes versus a regular shoe on your feet, you're going to notice that difference pretty big. And it's a similar concept for your car. Your car is going to feel that extra weight, or you're going to feel that extra weight as you're trying to drive and move forward. So having this lighter tire, even a little bit smaller tire, is probably going to benefit you more often than not, versus this heavier tire, which thankfully I did do a little bit of engine modification, so I have some extra power to help move this. But for a normal first-gen Crosstrek with a 2-liter engine, it's going to be a lot harder to get this thing rotating and moving, especially on inclines and over big rocks and stuff like that. Anyways, you got to keep that in mind when you're looking at these bigger tires. And while yes, weight is a big issue with going to a larger and heavier mud terrain tire, you do get some benefits. Some of those being durability, like these things have gone through the ringer, and other than some scrapes and bumps on the sidewall from pretty jagged rocks and whatnot, the sidewall's held up. I've had no punctures. versus the Toyos, which, and don't get me wrong, I love these tires. I'm actually going to be putting these on here shortly for the winter. But these guys definitely have a little bit higher tendency for sidewall damage or bead damage, just because they are a lighter weight tire. They're not intended for some of the crazier stuff that you're going to be getting into with, say, a mud terrain. And with that softer sidewall that these Toyos have, you actually get a couple of benefits in and of itself. By having that softer sidewall, when you do go to air down, you can actually get quite a bit bigger of a contact patch even than these wider tires, because at a lower PSI, you're going to get more compression, more squish. And with that more squish, you're going to have all of these side lugs, all of this traction right here is going to be on the ground as well. And that's a pretty big bit of traction you're going to be gaining versus these, which don't tend to squish as much. Yeah. And some of the other big differences is definitely going to be the actual tread pattern. You're going to be looking at a much more compact and tighter voids. A lot more siping too. So these are going to actually have a lot better wet weather performance and be a little bit quieter versus these big gaps that I can fit my whole finger in versus these little guys right here. And while these do have some siping, they do still have quite a bit less than all of this siping. And so you're going to end up having a little bit of a harder time getting that wet weather traction with a tire like this versus a Toyo or other all-terrain tire. Most all-terrain tires have some pretty decent siping built into them. So after covering some of these differences, we're talking about a heavier duty, heavier, and more aggressive tire versus a lighter, quieter, and better on-road traction tire. Really, it does come down to what you're wanting to do, your location, where you live, and whatnot. For most people, honestly, the Toyo is going to be your better option. And some people aren't going to be happy with that. Maybe they think the Toyos don't look quite as good as these with their chunky, knobby sidewall. But realistically, these wear better. These perform better in the rain. They're actually 3-peak mountain snow rated, so they're certified snow tires for the winter, unlike these Yokohamas. These tires, these Toyos, are gonna have they're gonna have a better time for you most of the time. Now, if you live in a more desert area, dry area like Southern California or Texas, Nevada, where you're not seeing as much snow or wet weather in general, these mud terrains are actually going to do really, really good for you, and they're going to help you get over some of the bigger rocks and whatnot. But you are going to be sacrificing some performance in terms of power. So just got to keep that in mind. So at the end of the day, if you are going to be trailing just on the weekends, occasionally, maybe a couple times a month, you're going to be experiencing a lot more of this wet weather like we have up here in the Pacific Northwest, or you're going to be going up into the snow. These are going to be a much better tire for you. If you live at altitudes, these are going to be a much better tire for you because they're a lot lighter weight. Recently, I just went on a trip to Colorado and did Imogene Pass, and I could have taken my big chonky mud terrains, which look really great and should have held up pretty good, but instead I threw on my Toyos because they're lighter weight. The car is going to have more power at that higher altitude, and they are a much better highway tire too for those long travels. So if you have the option, the best of both worlds is having a set of Toyos like these or some other lighter weight all-terrain. Even your stock tires are oftentimes going to be a better choice for these long road trips. And then having a set of mud terrains would be a really good option for around town, at home, your average trails that you're hitting up on the weekend that need a little bit more grip. These are going to do really, really great. So I'm thankful enough to have both of these and can fully utilize their capability to the best of their ability, depending on the season and activity that I'm engaging in. So Like I said, soon I'll be throwing the Toyos back on because the winter's coming, and these are not snow rated. And here in Washington, a lot of times you're required to have snow rated tires going over some of the passes. And most of these passes are the ones that we like to go play around in the snow. So even though it won't look as good maybe, or I will be in fact lowering my overall clearance just a little bit, these Toyos will end up being the better choice for the winter. I'm not saying you can't just run these Yokohamas through the winter. You definitely can. People do it all the time. But you'll just have to be a little bit more cautious, especially on ice and stuff like that, because they might not give you the same grip that a Toyo or Falcon or other all-terrain might give you that is actually snow rated. And of course, at the end of the day, a full winter rated, even studded winter tire is going to be way better than these Toyos. But if you're trying to find the best all-around tire, this is going to be a good option for you. There are, of course, other brands like the Falcon, like I was saying, Falcon AT3W, BF Goodrich KO2, now the KO3s, Milestar AT Pros. There are a bunch of options in the all-terrain segment that fit these Subarus, but realistically, having something that comes in a 225 for most crosstreks is a really big thing in my opinion. So anyway, so really quick, I just wanted to show some clips of the Toyos in action. Aired down. This is in Utah. You can see how well they're contorting and like moving around the rocks that they're coming in contact with, and really trying to fight for that grip, actually holding on to it pretty well. Here's another clip. This is from Sand Hollow in Utah. You can really see just how much, when aired down to like 20 psi, these will grip and mold to your rock that you're trying to get over, and by doing this you're pretty well able to prevent any major punctures or damage. Here's a Falcon AT3W kind of doing the same thing. And of course, we talk about winter. This is how much you air down. This is 5 psi, or I think it was closer to 10 psi. And with that, you're able to get some really good grip, to the point where I was able to pull this heavy camper trailer truck out of the snow. Now we're on to the mud terrains, and you can see just how easy they really wanted to grip up on that log through those rocks and just power straight over. And even though they're a little bit heavier, they're still super fun to slide around in. So anyways, Toyo's good, Yokohama's good. Depends on what you're using them for. If you're going to be aggressive, if you're going to be off-road in the desert or the mud, these are going to do really good. If you need something that's going to do everything pretty damn well, Toyo's going to be your guy. And for anybody who stuck around to the end of the video, just wanted to say thanks for supporting me and in this journey of starting to try and post YouTube videos. Like I said, the first one, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I thought I'd have some fun with it and try my best to share my build with everybody. So if you're wondering what these epic shots are, they're from the recent trip to Imogene Pass in Colorado. This is one of the trails nearby that we kind of did the day before. And all this epic drone footage is from my buddy Maddie, whose YouTube channel I'll link in the comments below. But anyways, yeah, like I said, thanks a ton for staying around and supporting me. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you think I'm doing a crap job, let me know and I'll try my best to fix it. So leave those comments all down below. And until next time, y'all, have a good rest of your day.